and welcome to the first session of the CXO Perspective series, jointly led by Capgemini and AWS. In this series, we invite digital leaders from different sectors to come together and share their learnings and insights on how they are reimagining their businesses using next-generation technologies. My name is Graham Brown, and I'm joined here today by an esteemed panel. To my left, David Peller serves as Global Managing Director, Travel and Hospitality for AWS. George Wang is Senior Vice President, Information Technology of Singapore Airlines. And lastly, Sumit Nupuri is Chief Operating Officer and on the management board of Capgemini Southeast Asia, Hong Kong and Taiwan. Gentlemen, welcome to the CXO Perspective series. I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you about insights and the journey that you've been on, about how you've addressed the challenges that you've faced in your respective industries. Sumit, perhaps we can start with yourself. Let's put this into some context, shall we? So Capgemini Research Institute has published a report annually since 2012 on how digital leaders are adopting technologies through different sectors. And what's been interesting is how that has changed. So particularly in the last 2 years in response to the pandemic, we've seen a change in how leaders are responding to digital capabilities. Let me recite some of the data here. In a survey of 1,000 executives globally, you found that 60% said that they were focusing on digital capabilities, or their digital capabilities were up to the level required. And that was a 24% increase since 2018. So clearly, if anything, the pandemic has had some positive impact on industry. Let's put this into context a bit further. You talk about digital masters. Now, this was a specific group of companies within that survey who were expanding their capabilities during this time. Please, for the audience, talk to us about who these digital masters are and specifically what they're focusing on now.
Right. So I'm going to take you back, Graham, to 2012. In 2012, these same executives who were surveyed rated themselves higher on digital capabilities than they did in 2018. That is a surprising statistic. And we think that there are a few reasons for that. One, in 2018, these executives realized that they hadn't quite achieved the successes from their investments that they'd envisaged. And perhaps that was due to the dizzying pace of change in technology. Some of it was because business models were disrupting traditional value chains. They probably underestimated the magnitude of the change that was required. And on the flip side, the market, the customers, employees, their expectations were way higher. But in 2018, something had started to change, and the pandemic really accelerated that. So 3 big things happened, I think, that had started to happen in 2018 and that got accelerated during the pandemic. One, the adoption of emerging technologies. Second, the investment in digital transformation. But third, and perhaps most importantly, the focus on talent and culture and operations and business innovation. And as a result, two interesting findings from that report that you quoted. One, that digital masters in 2020, all organizations improved their digital transformation, but digital masters widened the capability gap between themselves and their peers and competitors. And second, for digital masters, talent and culture took precedence. Employee upskilling was a real big focus area for them. And so it's a pleasure for me today to be with George from Singapore Airlines, clearly a digital master.
Thank you, Sumit. George, before we talk about the digital transformation journey of Singapore Airlines, let's put this in the scene of where we've been in the last 2 years. Obviously the pandemic, but you've also had the urgency of having to bring home Singaporeans on those return flights and residents as well. We've experienced a very fast moving regulatory landscape as well. The rules are changing, the technology is changing. And on top of this, you're tasked with having to maintain a world-class customer experience. So what we want to talk about today is really how you've responded. And also maybe we can go into detail about some of the responses from the last 2 years. take us back and walk us through the steps first. In the last 2 years, how has Singapore Airlines responded to this time?
Sure. Well, our initial response is very much focused on understanding the situation. Very early in the pandemic, we understand that it's going to be a very serious impact, not just on our industry, on the airline, but on the global economy and livelihood of the people in the society. So our initial focus is very much focusing on the health and the safety of our employees and our customers. So to this, I'll give you some examples that we actually have quickly reviewed and audited more than 100 touch points across the customer journey to improve and strengthen our health and safety protocols and to make sure that the travel is safe, both for our employee and for the customers. And the other part we responded is really that we recognize that the safety and health and safety is on a very top agenda of the customer compared to before the pandemic. So with the the sudden change in the travel restrictions, and it is actually quite a lot of frictions along the journey of the customer, right? Even when you want to start travel, you don't really necessarily understand the changing landscape of the travel restrictions and all this. So focusing on providing a seamless experience for the customer is very important for us, and we have done a lot of work on that. I'll give you two examples. One is, last year we have focused a lot of efforts in terms of providing a personalized travel restriction information for our customer. So even before you book, when you do the research, you will understand, based on who you are, your destination you want to travel, we give you a relevant to you information rather than hundreds of pages of information of the restrictions of destination you want to go, what is the requirement, what are the health safety protocols, and what do you need to do, right? And then along the journey, when you do the booking, that information is with you and will notify you before you travel, and during the day of travel, it's the same information. And then on the day of travel, we provide you all the, we try to address the concerns about health and safety and remove the frictional experience. And in the airport, for example, you can use a kiosk to do the contactless checking, and you can use your mobile phone to print your boarding pass, and of course, print your baggage tag. Then in the lounge and in the aircraft, you can order your food without physically go to there in the lounge, and in the aircraft we have digitized the menu. And you can even use your mobile phone, to control the infra entertainment system, the seatback infra entertainment systems, without even touching all the screens. So this is one part of this. The other part is really about to enable the self-service, like flight credit, like rebooking flow, upgrade the rebooking flow. And the last part is about digitally enable our employees and our operations, right? So for example, even before the pandemic, we have reimagined the journey of our cabin crew, right? In terms of the duty process. And that digital capability is very handy when we meet the pandemic because there are a lot more regulatory restrictions, the testing regimes, the vaccine requirements, and all these things which make it quite a big headache if we don't have the digital capability. So we have enabled our crew for them to be able to have the information to serve the customer better, but also have the capability to help them to do their own administrative tasks better.
The key message that will come out of this conversation, hopefully, is agile and the digital capabilities. Really, in the context of that, we have to bring in AWS. So, David, broadening out the conversation to the wider travel and hospitality sector. How typical is Singapore Airlines' response? What are you seeing in this sector?
I think we've just heard some great details, but Graham, the reality for the travel industry is that disruption isn't new. Whether it was a volcano in Iceland or a mechanical issue with an aircraft, disruption is part of the regular course of business in the industry. Now, clearly, the past 18 months have been a level, a scale, a context of disruption that the industry hasn't seen before. None of us have seen in our lifetimes. And that's really driven travel and airline companies in particular to think differently about how they approach their business. Gone are the traditional models of supply and demand. Traditional distribution and sales channels are not what they used to be. And it's really against that context that what we've seen, both from airlines, but also other major players in travel and hospitality globally, whether accommodation and lodging providers, cruise lines, car rental and ground transportation companies, or others, they've really chosen to focus their efforts over this past 18 months, the period of the pandemic, on digital transformation. They've really invested in their digital channels, whether that be mobile or e-commerce, whether it be in sort of reimagining the guest or traveler experience and looking at ways to engage travelers in this period where perhaps travel demand is subdued. And let's recognize that while travel is re-emerging, there are pockets of growth and demand around the world, and data certainly points to the fact that as consumers, travelers, certainly from a leisure perspective, many of us can't wait to get back on board and get on a plane or take a trip. The reality is that brands like Singapore Airlines and others have had to find new ways to engage customers and build new digital experiences. And I think it's those brands that have taken this period of disruption to rethink their traveler or guest experience, to invest in digital and leverage technology to provide new experiences, are those that are really going to endure well through recovery and for the long haul. And it's that context of, I think, building what's next for travel that's really going to be one of the most enduring legacies of this period. And from AWS's perspective, we provide, I think, the broadest and richest set of capabilities from a technology perspective to enable companies like Singapore Airlines to embark on that program of change.
I hope, David, in the next section as well, we can talk about some of those legacies in the context of new revenue models in this sector, because it's not just about surviving, it's also about thriving,
absolutely,
enduring for the long term. Sumit, bringing it back to you, I think we can agree that resilience has been one of the key words of the last 2 years, and we've talked about agile, we've talked about the changing nature of business that we've all experienced over this period. Let's put this into the context of business and the hard numbers as well, in talking about balance sheets, talking about strategy as well. What have you seen change, and how do we package all of this data now and help people understand what has happened in the last 2 years?
Right. There are some common themes across sectors, I think, and I'm going to take an example from maybe a couple of them. So insurance to start with. The pandemic catalyzed people's intention to purchase insurance. I think it's up 10 or 20%, over the past couple of years. And the sort of theme of the customer journey for insurers is something that we call care, as in convenience, advice, and reach. So technology companies, the new age digital players, think Ping An, they've got capital and they invested that in technology innovation and really created personalized experiences. George talked about that too. That's what airlines are doing as well. And customers have gravitated to that. So that turned the heat on incumbent insurers. So in turn, the incumbents have invested in their own capability building. They've even acquired fintechs or now we call them insurtechs. And they're trying to move from merely doing digital to being digital. And so as this, the sort of participants in the insurance industry, the boundaries blur, we see two big themes. One, that the coverage will be at the point of sale or service. And you see that even today. When you buy a Singapore Airlines ticket or an iPad, you can insure it at that point. So that's really about moving to a B2B2B, or a B2B2C ecosystem, where your customer experience is being controlled by the ecosystem partner. That's a key trend. Another one is that insurers now, rather than selling products, they are embedding value adds into their core offers. So you might see predict and prevent propositions based on AI and analytics. You have a wearable, and the insurance company will give you some cash back if you walk 10,000 steps, an average of 10,000 steps for 6 months. So these kind of trends, they're benefiting not only the organizations, but also the end customer. So similar themes in the telco industry, which are becoming digital ecosystem enablers in airlines and in travel. And so if I had to sort of summarize that, I would say that there are 3 key themes that we're seeing. One, that we have a data-driven organization and improved personalized customer experience. Another one is that we scale new business models and customer engagement models. And all of that enabled by, a superior employee experience and talent journey that George also referred to.
The net result of this superior experience means that we as organizations have to move a lot faster. And George, as a technologist, I'm sure you'll appreciate now that technology rollouts don't happen in years like they did in the good old days, but they happen in months and even weeks. So that places a lot of challenge. And obviously, a large organization like Singapore Airlines has to think agile, but you have, you're $1 billion organization. So how have you experienced this agility inside Singapore Airlines? How have you adapted? It's easy for a small F&B vendor to adapt and adopt mobile technologies and the next day be accepting mobile payments. But for a large organization like Singapore Airlines, it's of a magnitude. Walk us through maybe how that has changed internally inside Singapore Airlines, and maybe talk about some of the programs that have come as a positive result out of this new agile way of thinking.
Sure. I think maybe I'll provide some background first, that we have been transforming, in a company and focusing, one key area focus really on the digital transformation. And for us, the digital transformation is just not just about technology. It's really about 4 key foundation building. The first foundation building is about the culture. How do we bring our people around, and how do we change the culture of, agile is one key part of culture changing, right? How do we continue to focus on customer, using technology to focus on customer, and how do we use data to make better decisions? The second part is how do we improve and strengthen our digital capabilities. A key part of this is the way we work, right? And agile is a key part of the way we work. So we have transformed our whole IT delivery 100% to the agile even before the pandemic. And then we can see that our transformation agile is not just on the technology, not just on the process of agile. To your point, and it's really about the mindset change. The mindset change of the people, the mindset change of how do we do things, and the mindset change of the culture, right? The third part, the foundation, is more about technology building, the foundation of technology. And the last part is about, how do we collaborate, leveraging on the external innovation ecosystems. So to give you some examples of some of the results, last year, we don't fly much because of the pandemic. But actually, we are keep engaging the customer, even when we're not flying. So we have launched the program roughly a year ago called SIA Experience, right? There are 3 key things of the SIA Experience. One is SIA at home, which is basically to deliver, the premium foods to your home, right? And the second part is Restaurant 380 at Changi. So to enable you to, while you are not flying, but enable you to have the good experience in the aircraft, to have a meals, to have an in-flight entertainment. And the third part is about, inside SIA, So to give our customers a unique inside peek of how do we do things. So all of these, none of them might exist before that. And so we need to build quickly the capabilities to enable this, not in months, but in weeks, right? To enable the customer to book, enable our operation to run, to provide all these three, kind of like a new experience for our customers.
It must be a new learning curve for you as well. I
Oh, it
imagine.
is.
Thinking in an agile way.
I mean, absolutely. And one of the things we see really, for example, I mean, we really see the overwhelming experience and the support from, our customers and from our employees. And I'll give you an example. And it's really, really moving. So for Restaurant 380, and the first night when our crew, went through the gate room to the aircraft, and the people spontaneously stand up and give them a clap to really encourage them. I was, really moving, and I was in tears when I look at that thing, right? I mean, it's just the love of the Singapore Airlines, the love of the brand from our, customers and of our employees is just so amazing. So that's one example of, we really need to pivot and do things very fast and in a very agile way, literally in a very agile way, to enable some of the new business initiatives. The other example is, our ambassador program. So during this time, we have around like 2,000 staff across the SI group had took up the ambassador program in healthcare industry, in transport, social service sectors. So basically, to give back to the community, to make use of their skills and the customer service skills, their skills to engaging people to give back to society. So they have put in their capabilities, the professionalism, the communications, the service skills in good use in these roles. And many of these organizations who are receiving them were so impressed by their what they have done, what they have done, and actually contact us to say, can you train our own staff to do the same, right? Can you improve, our staff services? So that is the born of our SIA Academy. So SIA Academy is basically, we just started less than a year ago, and to basically offering the training in terms of customer service, in operational excellence, as well as the digital transformation to other companies. Now we have customers, many customers in many different sectors, from healthcare, hospitality, F&B sector, financial services, across many sectors on that. The third area I want to touch on is, about the new business, right? And leveraging our brand, leveraging our customer base, leveraging our assets to create a new so-called the lifestyle ecosystem of business. I mean, something that I think Sumit kind of alluded to earlier on the example of telcos and insurance and all this, right? So during this period, and we even before this period, we actually have already started creating the new engine of growth, along the line of customers, consumer lifestyle ecosystems. And during this pandemic, it just kind of accelerated the speed up on this. So example of this is really, our Chris Plus. So Chris Plus is a lifestyle reward program, which enable you to, spend the miles in the normal day-to-day retailers like, petrol stations, cake shops, even have a bubble tea, for example, right? And you can earn your points on top of, your usual other rewards as well. So we have seen a good growth on the Chris Plus during this period, and that is also a way for us to engage our customer, even when they are not flying. The other one is about our Chris Shop. So Chris Shop, people are familiar with Chris Shop when you fly with us. It is in-flight duty-free shopping, right? But before the pandemic, we actually have revamped the business from pure in-flight duty-free shopping to omni-channel shopping e-commerce site. So both in-flight as well e-commerce. And guess what? You know that during pandemic, very, very little revenue because people are not flying from the in-flight. So almost 99% of revenue is from the e-commerce side. So we have revamped the whole business, and just nicely in a way to respond to the pandemic. And the other thing is we have created a completely new startup outside of our company called Pelago. So Pelago is a Singapore Airlines venture, and it's really focusing on destination experience. So we created this venture before the pandemic, but we have pivoted in the venture during the pandemic. It's supposed to receive the tourists and introduce tourists for the local experience. Now we're focusing on local for local. We have launched in May this year, local for Singapore, for Singaporeans and Singapore residents. And the last thing I want to talk about is really about our the digital innovation. And the innovation is very much at the heart of our the company culture. And we are the first airline, for example, in the world to offer all classes the individual infra entertainment systems many years ago, right? And a few years back, we are the first airline in the world to enable you to use the mobile phone to control your infra entertainment programs even before you fly, right? To select and the flight to control. And we have established the Digital Innovation Lab, or what we call the CRIS Lab, a few years back, really to focusing on how do we collaborate, bring our business challenges to the open innovation ecosystem, to the world outside, to the startups, to the research labs, to help us to solve that problem. At the same time, to bring the technology. So to this, we have created, like our hackathon. This is 7 years running. We just finished the student edition of our SIA App Challenge, and we are going to have our startup track next month, and we have our accelerator to bring the startups to work with the airlines, to work with large organizations, right? So one example of this is we have brought one startup through our accelerator to work with our CRIS shop, and so to enable us to be the first airline in the world to offer in-flight shopping at the seatback entertainment systems, right? So that is the fruit of the collaboration between our lab, to bring the startup to work with our business, to transform our business. So to sum it up, with a pandemic, it just strengthened the digital, the value proposition of the digital technology, the digital capability, and we are committed to continue to invest in this digital capability to transform our business.
Excellent. David, I want to read back some of the points that George made just then, if you allow me to go through the list. Ecosystems, training other companies in customer service, investing in startups, innovation labs, hackathons. This is not the usual vocabulary of an airline, is it? Especially if we were to go back to 2018. A lot has changed, and definitely a shift in mindset from the destination approach towards business and solutions to a more sort of journey oriented. What are you seeing in the travel sector?
Look, I mean, you've just heard how an airline that was responsible for flying people from point A to B or C has become an experiences company. And as I look at, the past 18 months in particular, one of the most compelling changes we've actually seen to the way airlines and travel companies do business, and the way they approach innovation, is the impact that we've seen from executive leadership. It's the participation of leaders having much more direct involvement in the innovation journey of their organization. You know, in a way, it makes me think that digital transformation at first might have been about survival, but it really is now about reinvention and building for what's next in travel. And as I think about that sort of concept, it takes me back to the end of last year when Andy Jassy, then CEO of Amazon Web Services, spoke about 8 keys to reinvention. I'm not going to take you through all 8 now, you'll probably be pleased to know, but I will call out 2, which was a leadership will to invent and reinvent, and then secondly, speed. And I think those 2 attributes in particular have never been more in demand and more required from the travel business than today. And companies that have really adapted to this era and have sort of leaned into this period of disruption are, I think, creating new experiences, and you've just heard of some, that are really going to have a marked impact in the way that we fly, sleep, eat, and experience the world for a very long time to come. I can think of a couple of very specific examples beyond perhaps the airline business directly that I think are going to stay with us for a long period of time after the pandemic passes. This idea of contactless service and experience is absolutely here to stay. And I look at companies perhaps like IHG that has built a service called IHG Studio, which is about enabling the entire in-room experience and managing your on-property experience in a hotel from your mobile device. Or Wyndham Hotels that allows seamless check-in and check-out now through mobile. Services that have been developed over the past 18 months. Adjacent to the world of an airline is, of course, the airport experience. And Star Alliance, for example, has used machine learning and automation to try to improve the transfer experience, flying into and through an airport on one member of the alliance, connecting onto another. And so they've built decision algorithms and capabilities and tools to support the airport staff and airline staff to facilitate transfers, but also built a passenger-facing tool to help guide you through that experience and try and make it a more frictionless and more pleasurable experience for you. And then finally, I look at perhaps even beyond this space, and you look at how the whole digital experience is becoming more pervasive for travel and hospitality. So many of Singapore Airlines customers over the past 18 months have only interacted with the brand through digital. That in itself is going to be pervasive and remain from this period of disruption.
Yeah, some great examples there. Sumit, I'll bring that to you, that we're hearing a lot about resilience, we're hearing about agile, the digital experience. I'm sure for the CXOs who are watching this, listening to this program now, they're probably wondering, what does that actually look like at the coalface inside my organization? They may feel in some way that it may be a large mountain to climb. That where do I start with this journey as well? So help us understand, if you will, there's a lot of data out there, what organizations are doing. For my organization, how do I move this forward? What does that actually look like inside my leadership?
Great question, Ryan. So I would say that the key focus for, in the past, we would think about future proofing. Today we know that, this is a dream, but what we could do is set ourselves up to pivot quickly when the unknown unknowns manifest. And the key word for that is modularity. It's modularity in systems, in operating models, in offers, in ways of working. So when and maybe let me take a few examples. So when I talk about modularity of offers, again, think about a telco. If you go on the M1 website, earlier you would have a dizzying array of plans. It was easier to buy a car than choose what mobile phone plan you want to be on. But today you can go there and define what you want. So it's one plan, you define it. Similarly, technology, we've always had modularity. We've talked about loosely coupled architectures and API management and microservices and so on. And that's, here to stay and innovate even more. but modularity in operating models and organization structures. When George talks about CRISP and CRISP Plus and so on, these are, you're trying to now change your processes, your org structures. You're trying to establish a seamless experience there. That means you need some kind of structure that's not clunky, and you can implement the operating model, the process, and the technology to support that. And finally, Agile used to be about burn down charts and about ceremonies. And today organizations have understood that it's really a mindset and it's about pivoting and so on. So I think those are the 4 key elements. And AWS is a great metaphor for that, for scalability and flexibility. And we've seen that. It started, a few years ago. It was really about infrastructure in the cloud. But today, the AWS properties offer us a wide range of services, beyond compute and storage and networking to data streaming and data lakes and so on. So that's really the theme we're trying to introduce across all our functions. So I would leave you with that the key word is modularity.
Modularity. George, bringing this to you, modularity and looking forward as well. You've done a great job of giving us an insight into what it's like to be the CIO of the world's most awarded airline. What happens next? You've talked about thriving, not just surviving the last 2 years. How do you take that thriving forward into the next 3 years?
I think 3 key priorities for us. One is really to, the immediate recovery of travel, using technology to enable the seamless travel, to address, the customers, health safety concern, and to enable them to have peace of mind when they travel and to have a great experience during travel. That's the first one. The second one really about, expanding our horizon on the business, to generating new revenue, new business. And the third one is really about leveraging technology to help to transform the business and at the same time to bring the technology in. So you can see there is one is about technology to enable the business transformation. One is also about more proactive to bring the relevant technology in to transform the business.
Sumit, you obviously, with the rest of the audience, experienced the evolution of Singapore Airlines here. But I'm sure this must also place emphasis on the evolution of your own organization. We've talked about agility and modularity. How does that work in consulting, for example? How do you become more modular and more agile? You can't just advise clients on that. You must also be ahead of the curve. How does that work?
I have a great example, Wang. We started during the pandemic, a program with Singapore Airlines. So the process from partner selection to contract signing to kicking off the program and now a couple of months away from going live, all remotely. This is completely new. We've always had models where people, what we call distributed delivery. People have been in different locations, but we've always had people at the client side. So clearly, there's a big change happening just right there for us. There's also a great opportunity for us now. Organizations like ours, we started with what we called offshoring. We'd have large numbers of people in locations which provided access to resources and so on. And then we moved to something called right-shoring, a number of near-shore locations as well. And now it's really about anytime, anywhere. We've got access to a global talent pool, and we're able to bring the best best talent to our clients anywhere. So I think that those are some of the key sort of benefits that we're able to bring in this new ways of working.
Gentlemen, thank you for your insights today. David, George, Sumit, thank you for sharing your journeys for the CXO Perspective series.